setup is all messed up. I normally do Friday lives these days on my computer, but I forgot to charge the camera that I use for that, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do it live on my phone like I used to, and we'll see how bad the trolls are today. Let me change it to all chat so I can see everybody coming through, and we'll get a Q&A started, and I'm gonna make some tea and all that kind of stuff. Now, it's been a minute since I've gone live on my phone, so we're gonna see what happens differently. When I go live from my computer, I notice it pretty much just shows me to followers and doesn't kick me into the whatchamacallit, the live short type feed where people are in there, which is probably why I don't get as many trolls. But so I am getting down to the bottom of this Moonlight White tea, and I will miss her when she's gone. I'll probably order more, but that's what I'm doing today again, and then make some water and make some tea. I'm doing okay, but that's kind of a lie. I'm existing. Sometimes I think that's all we can really do is exist and do our best to push through. I just spent the past, I don't know, 2 months at least, trying to recover from like chaos that I can't really talk about, and part of that was I was gonna build a new website, and I did, and I was like pretty close to it, and then I realized that I can't. I just can't. I cannot have a Shopify store, and I was trying to go from BigCommerce to Shopify, and I even had an amazing person that was a subscriber reach out to me just the past few days and offer to help with some stuff that I was stuck on, but I realized it doesn't matter because they are notorious for shutting down herbal supplement stores, and I can't risk it, and it broke me a bit yesterday because like the level of stress that I have inflicted upon myself to create that and like do the coding, because it couldn't just be like the click and play option. I had to make it very, very customized, and now I have to walk away from it. And so, that is what it is, and it just kind of, I don't know. I talked about the other day, I think it was on the Sundays, remember one, but I think I released it since then. I talked about how, like, usually in my life, the way things work is, like, I'll start getting, like, just snowballs of chaos before it's like friction builds up, like, just before, like, an earthquake gives way. And so, I'm right about at the fucking edge of that, of just things breaking, but like probably for the good, hopefully, we'll see. But it was just, it was gutting, and especially because I've been like pouring myself into it for so long. um, it's just been one of those things. It'd been one thing if you're like a week into it and you're like, oh, that sucks. But at the very least, I caught it before, you know, things went bad. So tea and then questions. And actually, it's not just about that. It's like shifting everything I do and how I function and how I show up and what that means for me. And I don't know. I'm in the middle of like, I don't know, if you're not on my email list, you should. I'll have, I should have given my daughter the link for it, but I'll drop my link pinned in the comment section to join my email list, because I think I'm going to still be on YouTube, obviously. I think I'm going to really start communicating through there more than I do. I know right now I send out like little tiny weekly herbal tips that usually link back to a video, and I let people know about Q&As, and obviously I let you know about stuff that that's in the apothecary, like sales or new things like that. And I'll also do some of that, but I think I'm gonna like, I don't know, I'm having to come to terms with, I have such an interest in like the bodily function as a whole beyond just herbalism, and that's just kind of like who I am. And so I spent most of the morning writing up my thoughts on like phytic acid and the stuff that I've come through. Um, and I don't know, I'm just gonna start like giving brain dumps in the email and making it slightly more newsletter-ish, uh, things that I'm interested in, health stuff. And definitely if you're on that list and you end up getting that email, which I'm not ready to send out yet, it'll send out pretty soon, a few days or so. I'm open to suggestions about what topics you'd like to see me cover in like a future brain dump email. I swear to God, I'll put words together. Swear to God. But yeah, and so that's just kind of like where I'm at and trying to like, I don't know. It's really weird because I kind of already live in my own little like corner of the internet, but like I have this feeling like that I want to like, I don't know, I want to kind of like pull in more and just kind of like exist in this little corner. And I don't know why in my mind, I don't know, I can't really put it to words all the way yet. That might just seem weird, but that's where I'm at, and that's where my brain is slowly like meandering me down to as I like pick up the pieces of things that occurred and try to like put everything back together, but somehow be new. I don't fucking know. We'll see how well my brain works during this Q&A. No, there is no spitting it out to do. I really mean like I'm still like processing it. I'm still like seeing how it goes and like what I'm gonna be doing, like, and so I can't, because someone said spit it out, but like I can't exactly. Right, I'm still putting it all together in my mind. How do you get in my email list? Well, if you're a future person watching this, I'll have pinned it. I should have given my daughter a link to drop, but you can go to my website and it'll pop up. It's like it'll pop up, offer you a free guide. You get a free guide and then be on my email list, and that's just she'softhewoods.org. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be a different year, I think. Gonna be something. And I thought to myself, is it because I'm turning 40? And I don't really feel like it's correlated, right? Like I don't feel like I'm doing this because I'm afraid of age or anything like that. Like a midlife crisis. It's I don't know. It's more like maybe my tolerance for like my own bullshit is changing. I don't know. Okay, let's have this first sip of tea and answer some questions. All right. If you have a question, say question, and we'll see what we can do today. I just received my Common Herbs book yesterday. So excited to get in there and start learning more. Awesome. Thank you so very much for your support. Let me see. Sometimes if I go to top messages, it'll change it. All messages. I also don't think that my admin is in here or my comments are lagging because it's not going. Or you just don't have questions. Let's see. Scroll up here. Hard to believe that nobody has any questions, but I guess I'll just sit here and drink some tea until someone. Oh, there it is. They all just came rolling through. Okay. My brain was like, oh man. Question. My dog is recovering from pancreatitis. How can I help him long term? Like any animal, including ourselves, it's all about nutrition. So if you can afford to do like even like a partially like raw diet, where he's got access to like fresh meat, milk, eggs, things like that, could probably go a long way. I know that can be a little bit expensive, so you can maybe just like supplement alongside of their normal food, and that would probably be pretty great. Just in general for like supporting dogs aren't meant to just eat dry food their whole life, and the industry really boomed after World War II, and so it wasn't always like that. People didn't even buy, or dog food wasn't really even a thing. People used to just feed meat scraps and things like that. I know times have changed, but the pendulum swung too far, and now they're just living off of dry food, right? Let's see. Question. Cheap or readily available? Lost it. She was asking about food poisoning. Activated charcoal. You can probably even get it at Walmart. It's pretty fantastic for it. And then, of course, you could get like some fresh ginger or even just some ginger ale. Although these days, ginger ale doesn't really have a whole lot of ginger in it, so buying and simmering some fresh ginger would probably be better. But it might be easiest just to take a bunch of activated charcoal. Um, okay, so question. Is your favorite infusing oil for floral or herbs avocado? Yeah, I really like avocado. She has a lower protein ratio. People are like, there's no protein in oil, but there is. Olive oil has a really high protein ratio. Avocado oil has a low one, which means she doesn't go rancid very easily. She's highly heat stable, meaning you can use her in your formulas and stuff, like if you're making a cream or a balm or a salve. And because the oil is stable, it helps stabilize the compounds that you've extracted from your herbs. And generally, she's not a PUFA, so she's pretty good on your skin, and she doesn't dry your skin out. She's just all over my top choice for sure. Okay, so question. I want to make personal hair and skincare products, so I am trying to determine if its components are oil or water soluble, hence whether to infuse vodka or oil. Yeah, that really just comes down to the what you're trying to extract out. There won't be a whole lot of necessarily oil soluble properties in the way that they're like, I mean, those do exist, but it's not like you have to just find a plant that's specifically oil soluble. Where people get tripped up is that there's a bit of misinformation going around where people will dump like high proof alcohol over herbs and let it sit for a little while and then use those herbs to make their oil infusion because they think that they somehow are making it stronger. But you're not able to actually extract the water soluble properties of an herb into oil if they're like very specifically water soluble. They think that it makes their oil stronger because it gives it color faster, but that's just because the alcohol pulled out the chlorophyll content a little faster than the oil would. Right, but usually you end up with rancid oil when you do that method. But there's not really much that I worry about when it comes to oil infusions in regards of if the herb has water or oil soluble properties. Now, when it comes to a tincture, I'm a little bit more mindful about it. Something like CBD, you have to have fat in your tincture, like with glycerin, to extract the fatty compounds from the cannabis, right? But at the same time, there's some stuff like lilac where you can't catch the scent with anything but fat. And if you don't catch the scent, you don't get the VOCs, and then your tincture isn't really a tincture that you want to use. Really, there's not a whole lot of compounds in there. But that's more towards the tincture side than it is the oil side, if that makes sense. And if you're making a cream or you're making like an actual like preserved water and combined with oil emulsification process, you can use both because you can use distilled water to infuse your herbs and then use that as your water portion of your cream, and then you can have an infused oil as well and put them together so you're not missing anything out. Okay, so question, what can I try for severe hot flashes? I already tried your wild. And if that didn't help, you probably are having it more along the lines of progesterone or testosterone issues, right? So, wild yam is really about like the disogen content and your body's ability to turn that into DHEA, which your body then uses to make, like estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. It's like a precursor hormone. But sometimes if you're estrogen dominant already, it just shifts it into estrogen, especially if you're not taking it with like vitamin E to stop it from like going into estrogen. But you could work with pine pollen. Pine pollen would be a good option to get androgens and some progesterone into your body without it necessarily turning into estrogen. Right. You could also just try Progest E or like a progesterone cream. See how that helps. And then I really also like, from an herbal standpoint, you can use like motherwort to calm them down. It's pretty good, but it's more like a band-aid of just like calming down the flare as it's happening. Okay, question. Oh, lost it. Question. What to do with deep vein thrombosis on the leg? You know, when it comes to vein stuff, my brain always goes to like how strong are your veins. And usually when it comes to varicose vein, DVT, spider veins, it's a symptom of like the collagen synthesis has, in my opinion, the collagen synthesis has broken down in your body because you're either not getting enough vitamin C, you're not getting enough like gelatin in your diet, you can't like synthesize this collagen anymore, and eating collagen doesn't really help, unfortunately. So really helping like your glutathione production, which helps in turn make collagen, which you can do by just vitamin C plus come on brain gelatin, right? And then that does that in your body for you naturally. Some people just take glutathione, but I always kind of feel like it's better to give the body what it needs to make what it needs, if that makes sense. But then also make sure that you're getting enough like vitamin K1 and K2. It's also really important for like vein health. Just like keep an eye on it because you don't want to end up in the hospital over it, like make sure that you're monitoring it and things like that. Okay, so question: what are your thoughts on psychedelic mushrooms for PTSD? So the way that mushrooms work is that they shut down your direct mode network in your brain. You know how you're like but end up at Walmart, or you go in a direction you didn't mean to go, like you accidentally drive to work, or you drive here, you're like, damn, or like, oh, I didn't mean to walk into this room, or how you can do something without thinking about it, or how you breathe, all this type of stuff. That's your direct mode network, and it's like this function in your brain where you just can do something without thinking about it to like preserve like mental energy, basically. But like all of our like behaviors, patterns, ideas, beliefs, they can kind of be lumped into this network, and then what happens is you take these mushrooms and it shuts down your direct mode network, and in theory you find different ways to view the world. It does work, but at the same time, if you don't have new neural pathways to walk down, you end up kind of just going back to that direct mode network. You have to kind of build up these pathways before it'll be impactful, in my opinion. I really think that in the years to come, if people really try to do it, I really think that if you worked with low dose ketamine for like 5 to 6 months, because ketamine actually rebuilds neural pathways in the brain and gives you like a different way forward. Like you can't make new direct mode areas if you don't have any neural pathways left, right? So you make these new neural pathways for 5 or 6 months of low dose, and then try mushrooms, because essentially you're like trying to push yourself onto a sidewalk that you haven't built yet, and that's just kind of how I feel about it. And it's why I end up seeing people who say that they use mushrooms for like depression, anxiety, and all that type of stuff, and it's fine. But I also see that they have to use them more and more, and eventually what they're doing is just trying to shut themselves out of that direct mode network. But because they've never built anything like I talked about, they end up having to do more and more mushrooms. And I think mushrooms are really beneficial to an extent, but I also think that they can be really damaging. They often give a god complex. And so, like, people use them more and more, and then they kind of become myopic and, think the world is revolving around them. And if my husband is listening, I can hear myself too loudly, and it distracts me because he's like on the phone, and I like hear myself talking, and it's weird. Um, okay, so let's see. Question: what are the best herbs to combat excessive mucus? It depends on if you're trying to break it out and get it out. That would be something like thyme, mullein, even elecampane would help you like bust it up and spit it out, which is important because if it gets packed in there, it can be pneumonia, right? But if you're constantly making it, something like elderberry bloom or berry tincture or tea would probably be helpful. She's pretty good at calming down those reactive immunities that are like causing you to have allergies in the first place, or whatever the mucus is being caused from. But I also like stinging nettle for that. Like a nettle tincture is pretty fantastic, and or infusion is probably better, especially type, right? But if it's from being sick, Horseradish is a good one and easy to get, but don't buy the horseradish like paste. Get an actual horseradish root, and that can really open up your airways as well as break the mucus up, and it's pretty readily available for somebody who's pretty sick. Okay. Hi, April. Question: anything topical that I can do for an arthritic knuckle? Yeah, a good a good cayenne salve, or cream, or excuse me, or gel. Apparently, I coughed on the word gel. Choking on my own words here, folks. Can go a long ways at helping blunt that pain. And then you could start doing comfrey compresses. The cayenne's just gonna block your body from sending like the nerve pain to your brain, but the comfrey might actually help repair something that's happening in there. It really depends on if it's like osteo or rheumatoid. If it's from wear and tear, the comfrey will probably do better than if it's from your immune system overreacting, if that makes sense. But cayenne is pretty good for helping with pain topically in general. Let's see. Question: will you have a Cortiseps Panax ginseng blend? I didn't see one. I don't know. I might at some point. Panax ginseng is pretty expensive. I like American ginseng. She's in the same family, but she's more of an adaptogen. And then also I can get the Panax ginseng, the American ginseng, I can get that farm grown, which is important because ginseng is insanely over harvested. But when it comes to Panax, most of it is wildcrafted, and a lot of it comes from China, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I've been trying to think about when it comes to like the formulas I create, like I don't want like political stuff to stop me from being able to make the blends that people rely on. And right now, I'm not overly impacted by potential tariffs, right? So, but yeah, I mean, it would be an easy blend to do. Yeah, I could look into it. It'd be very stimulating though, like at the same time, right? And I'd be worried about somebody would get it and like pop it on an empty stomach and be like, I had a panic attack. I'm like, yeah, cordyceps and panax together are like rocket fuel. So you really start really small when you're using it in general. Okay. Question: in the summer when I get overheated, my head sweats profusely nonstop, dripping off my nose and my eyes, irritating with saltiness in my eyes. My scalp gets so itchy and rashy for days. It sounds like that's your primary detox point for your body, which I don't want to be like, that's just natural, but if you're only sweating out of your head, your face, and your neck, but not like, let's say, your armpits or under your boobs or, your lower stomach or anything like that, or your butt crack, it makes me kind of wonder about what the rest of your lymph nodes are doing. So you could consider doing something like working with cleavers, dry brushing, where you like brush your lymph node areas all down your body, rebounding, jumping on trampolines, and just seeing if you can get your lymphatic system up and flowing better so that sweat has the capacity to exit different areas of your body. Because we get kind of backed up in certain areas, and it can just end up being like, oh, I just sweat profusely out of my armpits but nowhere else, or around my stomach or my thighs, or and usually that's a symptom of like your other pathways not being open. Okay, so let me jump down here. Let's see, how to get energy back at 74. Well, we can't rewind the clock. I mean, your body is naturally slowing down at that point, but you can do things like make sure that you're getting morning sun in your eyes as soon as you wake up. If you're capable of getting out there for 10-15 minutes in the morning, that really helps reset your circadian rhythm. It tells your body to start like working with cortisol and giving your body what it needs, right? Of course, it gives you vitamin D and all that type of stuff as well, and so that would probably go a long way. And I know it sounds too simple, but it really is. It is really impactful. Anybody who has insomnia, that should be a thing you're doing too. So you reset your circadian clock. And of course, depending on your digestive at your age, like making sure that you're getting enough carbohydrates, if you're not dealing with like really bad like blood sugar issues. But even the carbohydrates then, like make sure that they're complex, like, you know, whole grains, fruits, sweet potatoes, or roots. Your body needs glucose for energy at every moment of your life. Your brain needs it, you know. And then you could start working with like minerals, like magnesium. People think of magnesium as like something that calms you down, and true enough, but also you need it for like energy production in your body, you know. And but as we get older, we have a hard time getting nutrients from our food. So using a magnesium spray topically would probably get more magnesium into your body than taking a supplement would, especially at your age. But you could also do like magnesium baths and soaks and things like that. Um, you know, and I watch my mom. I watch my mom is going with this too. She's your age, and you know, and I try to help her. And she has good days and bad days. You know, about like energy wise. But I think a lot of it is like probably a mental mindset too. I know I'm young. Although society tells me that I'm almost 40, they can just huck me into a dumpster. But I'm also having to like accept that I am not as capable as I was when I was even like 30, right? Like things are changing, and it doesn't mean that we have to just like lay down and die, but sometimes if we change our mind frame a little bit about what we're able to do at what phase we are in our life, it makes us feel less tired in a way that like we don't have this pressure on ourselves that we should be able to do all these things. And that might not apply to you, but it's just something that I've been thinking about in general as I feel my body age. You know. But yeah, I think probably working in carbohydrates. Of course, you could work with some herbs. You could work with like green tea. You could work with shilajit, bee pollen, but I would just do small amounts at first, because sometimes we use these things to get energy, but then we end up more tired because we're pushing our body to perform when it doesn't have the ability to, if that makes sense, you know. Okay, so um, let's see. Let me jump right down here. Oh, here's a question. Can you redo a tincture and use the same alcohol to add herbs and make stronger prickly lettuce? Yeah, so you can do it a couple times. Some people have done it longer, you know, gone for a really long time where like, let me grab one here. Here's a basil tincture. I could strain this basil out, save the tincture, which is the alcohol, and then put that tincture back over fresh basil and let it infuse again. You could do it like 3 or 4 times. The thing is, I don't know how much stronger it gets past 2, honestly, because the thing is, a tincture gets full. I know that sounds funny, but like you're asking this alcohol to extract very real properties from a plant, and eventually there won't be room. It's why I know a lot of people like to use brandy to make tinctures and stuff, but I don't ever use colored alcohol to make tinctures because it's already been tinctured. Uh, the only way that alcohol gets color, for the most part, when it comes to liquor, is if they've soaked it in wood, or unfortunately these days they've added a dye to it. But usually they're soaking it in wood, like whiskey, for example, or brandy starts out clear, and then they put it in wood casks, and what does that do? It tinctures the wood, and it gives it flavor and body and aroma, but that means it's relatively full, so you could use it for a tincture, but it still ends up being a little weaker than it would be as if it was like clear vodka or something like that, or grain neutral. Do it twice. You could do it twice, and um, if you want to add a different herb to it, I don't usually suggest that. I would just make the 2 tinctures individually and then combine them if you were wanting it, or I would save part of it as like just that herb and then use part of the tincture to do a different herb with it, right? So you still end up having just that tincture, because inevitably you'll end up just needing one of those herbs and not both of them together, if that makes sense. Let me jump way down here. Okay, let's see. Question. If you already answered, I'm sorry. My service is terrible right now. I'm in the early stages of my first pregnancy. What is your... Oh, lost it. What is your number one suggestion to support myself and my baby? I would buy Sally Fallon's Wise Traditions cookbook. right? Like the nutritional advice they give to pregnant women these days is abysmal. Your body is literally making another body. You need so much deep nutrition, and if you've already fallen down that rabbit hole, you're well ahead of the game. You know, but even just looking at, if you can't afford the book, even just looking at like the Western Price Foundation type eating, which is just whole foods, right? But also like really looking at like, you know, organs, muscle meats and things like that, and giving your body really what it needs, will go a very long way in making a big fat healthy baby. You know. And so you know, when it comes to herbs, you could work with like nettle infusion, but like a lot of people want to know what herbs they can use during pregnancy, and you didn't ask me that specifically, but it inevitably comes up in this realm. And the thing is, your body is in such hyperdrive, creating a baby, that it doesn't really necessarily need you to push it further, if that makes sense, with like compounds from plants. Not that you can't use them as needed depending on, but like I see a lot of people like want a whole list, and I'm like, how about you just focus on like deeply nourishing foods, right? Like that is what your body needs more than anything. And I want you to remember, if you are going to breastfeed, you will need way more calories, especially protein, to create enough milk and not deplete your body than you do while you're pregnant. It's a really, really, really calorie intensive thing to create milk. There's a reason why, like with our milk goats and stuff, I know that we're human and they're goats, but we're milking animals, and you have to keep on top of their protein intake, or they lose weight like that, and they look like an ASPCA commercial. Like it's like you have to. But and now, why you may not lose weight like that, what you do lose is nutrition and bone mass and teeth integrity and all kinds of stuff, you know. Okay, so question: what is the best thing to do for a person whose body holds too much cholesterol and just got diagnosed with congestive heart failure? Well, I really like phytic acid for this. It's pretty fantastic at helping your body regulate cholesterol. It also helps with inflammation, and bad cholesterol is highly linked with your body's attempt to quell the inflammation, but also getting out in the sun. If you aren't in the sun, your body can't turn cholesterol into vitamin D and it rises. And making sure that you're eating enough binding foods like oatmeal, beans, whole grains. These things are going to bind to your bile acid, and then you're going to shit it out. But did you know that the way your body makes new bile is to pull cholesterol from your blood to make new stomach acid? That's like the way it works. So if you're not going to the bathroom enough, if you're not consistently like getting rid of like your toxic bile load by eating binders, then it's constantly recycling your bile, and you don't pull cholesterol to make new, right? And then you could also work with like hawthorn and shiitake, but if they have you on medications, be mindful, because hawthorn is like a mild MAO inhibitor, and so it could interact with meds they might already have you on if your heart's skipping around and stuff like that. Um, she says, "LOL, I am breastfeeding. Thank for addressing this." Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like when people will come at me, and I know we were just talking about a heart thing and then back to breastfeeding, but like people will be like, "Oh, what herb can I use to increase my breast milk?" And I'm like, "A steak." Seriously, if you're struggling with milk production, yes, there are some herbs that can help a little bit, but it's usually a sign of you're not getting enough protein and enough water. You need to eat like the whole cow and drink like the whole river, and then your body can produce milk. Like protein, 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 protein will have you making all the milk and filling up the. Um, Hi, beautiful soul. Just like and subscribe. Thank you for doing what you're doing. You're so very welcome, and thanks for finding me. I'm slowly working on getting back to doing things. And so usually I have a lot more videos posting, not just Q&As, but I remind myself as I step back into it, I'm like, well, there are like over 400 videos you've made over the years, April, so it's not like there's lack of things for people to watch. Question: my husband has a terrible attack with gout right now. We've done the normal cherry juice, cabbage leaves, and prescription meds. Nothing is taking off the edge. Any suggestions? Yeah, you could work with corn silk. You could also work with uva ursi, bearberry, knick. I would work with corn silk on a pretty regular basis. probably wouldn't do the uva ursi constantly. That one can be hard on your kidneys, right? For reducing those uric acid levels. And I assume he's already eating like low purine foods if he's on medication at this point. Um, but yeah, and then it might not work instantly, but corn silk has been shown to lower the uric acid levels, and anything that supports his kidney function is honestly going to help prevent these gout flares from happening, because it's only happening because he's not pissing out the uric acid. Right, the purines are turning into uric acid, then it's turning into crystallization, and then you get gout. So that might help. Um, let's see. Question: should we keep soaking beans and grains to get the phytic acid out? How do you get more phytic acid that's good for the body? Yeah, I'm like deep in an upside down world right now. That's the first email I'm gonna send out. Is a big thing about phytic acid. So I have stopped soaking everything but beans. I just soak the beans because I don't want to take 10 hours to cook them. Right, but when it comes to everything else, I've just stopped soaking them. The highest source of phytic acid is corn. But you have to get it unprocessed, and usually it's the dent corn versus the sweet corn. But then, of course, like you've got your beans, your lentils. Lentils cook fine without being soaked. Freshly milled flour, which I know we can't all just do, but it's a rabbit hole that I have been falling down, and I'm fingers crossed about to win an old antique electric flour mill because I cannot afford the new ones on an auction that I bid on. And then, you can also work with, there's lots of phytic acid in nuts as well. And then I have a whole list. I'm putting out a whole food list with the email, and I think that's going to go out in the next couple days. I was writing on it before I got to here, and that's why I forgot to charge my camera to do from my computer versus my phone type live. And then I also started taking I started taking it as a supplement from I like the IP6 Gold one because that's the one that has actual scientific studies behind it, like on that brand, and it's relatively affordable. Okay, so let's see. I have chronic pain from kidney surgery scar from 7 years ago. Unable to take aspirin products. Can I use wild lettuce tincture for the pain? Doctors recommend hydros, which I refuse. Have you tried LDN? Now you could try the wild lettuce, right? But so LDN is low dose naltrexone. It is technically an opioid derivative, but it has no opioids in it. But it hits the same receptors in your brain, and at low dose, it's pretty actually amazing for pain, inflammation, and all that type of stuff. And so I would look into LDN. You do have to get a prescription for it, but even if your doctor is like, oh, I want you to have opioids, right? Even if your doctor refuses, you can hop online and get a prescription. Like, it's pretty common now online. Just a different doctor, and you usually pay out of pocket, but some of them will allow you to submit, like, your insurance stuff. Just depends on the place you decide to go with. But that would be something that I would look into for any type of chronic pain that anybody's dealing with. It's also really good for your immune system, cancer support, all kinds of stuff like that. People use it for fibro, anything like that. And then topically, you might try, I don't know how impactful it would be because it's topical, you might try castor oil packs to see if it can over time maybe some of the scar tissue buildup. It's internal, so it might be a stretch. You can't use don't eat the castor oil, you shit your brains out. But topically, it might help over time with some of the pain and to reduce that scar tissue buildup. But definitely look into LDN. And again, you could try the wild lettuce tincture, but I'd rather help you find something that actually like reduces the inflammation and reduces the pain in that regard, versus and like working with your natural pain receptors versus necessarily just blunting it. But you could try it, the wild lettuce tincture and such. Okay. Let's see. Question. Ideas to increase progesterone. I'm taking your chamomile pine pollen capsules. How do we do that the hormones are balanced again? You can work on supporting, like if your progesterone is really low in comparison to your estrogen, the answer is almost always you have to work on the high estrogen, because what happens when any given hormone is too high, it represses the others. So you might just add in more chamomile, like chamomile tea, working with oats, beans, even like bentonite clay to start binding your bile. Now I know I talked about that with cholesterol, but when you bind your bile is also full of like hormones and stuff, so it helps you like shit out the excess hormones, right? And so that can be really impactful. You could consider working with Vitex as well, or chasteberry. I would cycle through that, and if you're really desperate for it, like if your levels are like insanely low and they haven't given you something for it, I'm sorry, but you could also get Progest E. It's basically Dr. Raymond Pete. He's passed away now, but they're still running the company, where it's just progesterone that's been made from wild yams, essentially put into vitamin E oil, and you just put some on your wrists. Some people take it internally. I find it better if I put it on my wrists. I cycle with it. I use it basically right after I ovulate until I bleed. And that's the cycle, 2 weeks, right? It's pretty easy to do it. And you can kind of have to guesstimate if your cycle's not normal. But it's accessible too, if you don't want to go the herbal route. Okay, so, question. I have a son who is diagnosed with autism. He is 6 years old and so smart. Do you have any books you recommend for parents with autistic children? Any general tips that would help? First, I'd like to put this out there that my husband lives with ASD, and so, I don't really have any books that I recommend, and people always get freaked out when you talk about like bodily functions when it comes to autism, about like contributing factors. But I think it's interesting, and I like to research the stuff, and I think eventually we will find out that there are many different causes of autism. Sometimes I think it's genetic, sometimes I think it's environmental, sometimes I think it's a nutritional deficiency, right? And I think as time, if we're allowed to study it, I think we'll see to be able to like tease it out. But one thing that I actually happened to come across that was really interesting, and I wasn't even looking for it. So I learned that I have a carnitine wasting mutation, and that's like a whole different thing. But what was really interesting is I came across like all these studies where they were showing that autism and carnitine deficiency were highly linked, right? And so there were people and studies talking about when they tested their child's carnitine levels, they were super, super low. Even if they didn't necessarily have a primary carnitine wasting mutation, they found it supportive to work with carnitine supplementation. And it doesn't mean that it like takes the autism away or that autism is bad, but I just thought it was a really interesting data. But I've seen the same thing for thiamine as well, like thiamine deficiencies. And so I think one of the best ways that we can support our kiddos or people in our life with that, especially if like we're in charge of their well-being, is to see if there are any nutritional or genetic gaps that we can fill for them to make it easier for them. Right, and what was really interesting about seeing people talk about the carnitine is they were like, well, my son or my child was having like the breakdowns, right? And they would hurt themselves with these breakdowns, but then once they started the carnitine or the B1, depending on which one they were talking about, they noticed like a huge reduction in this. And now people would say maybe that's just for the external comfort of the parent, but I actually challenge that, because if they're no longer freaking the fuck out to the point where they want to hurt themselves, I've got to believe their inner narrative feels better. Because it's not a sedating thing. It's just about, like energy metabolism in the brain. And I just find that really, really interesting. But I don't have any specific book recommendations or anything like that. I do think that ultimately it's good to get a wide view of all perspectives of it, because I think that it's really easy for society to key in on really high functioning autism and then be like, it's awesome. But that leaves all the people that have like severely autistic children or live with severe autism on the outskirts and feeling like monsters for wanting to have answers. Right, I think that it can be both. I think that, so allowing yourself to research and be exposed to all of that would probably be just beneficial in general for understanding like a myriad of experiences, And so that's where my brain goes to. Okay. Oh, someone says IBS is also chronic in autism, so gut care is important. Oh, well, here's the fun thing. If you have a carnitine deficiency, you will shit your brains out constantly because your body can't utilize the fat that you're ingesting, and so it just makes you shit like crazy. It makes you have stomach pain, nausea, chronic diarrhea, and they call it IBS, right? And so it's just super interesting stuff to me. Okay, so question. Sister eats whole foods, Weston Price diet, still very low in ferritin and low in iron, very overwhelmed, suspect low zinc and B vitamins, but also misaligned C1 vertebrae. Yeah, one thing that's really interesting, and it's one thing that I've been researching, and I was actually talking about the Weston Price Foundation in my letter that I'm going to send out, where they're the pretty biggest vocal opponent against phytic acid, but what's really interesting is like people will say that phytic acid reduces zinc and iron in your body, and so to stay away from it. But we actually know that your body makes phytase, which is an enzyme that then unlocks the zinc and the iron, and that over time it showed that actually you ended up with more bioavailable iron and zinc in your body. It's almost like the body isn't dumb, and we've been consuming these things for thousands of years. And anyhow, but that stuff aside, so like if she's avoiding like all grains that would have phytic acid in them, if she's not eating enough red meat, if she's not eating enough copper rich foods, that's a really important one. There's a large theory that anemia is actually a copper deficiency, but also is she getting enough vitamin C? Like if you don't have enough vitamin C, your body can't really shuttle iron into your cells. Right, and so I know she's probably had about 1,000,001 iron blood tests, but has she ever had a comprehensive nutrition panel done? I would look into one from like it's like Vital Pros. It's super expensive. It's like $400. I know, but if she can save up for it, and get that done, they test your vitamin C, a lot of B1 vitamins. They'll test your copper. They'll test all this stuff. She could also consider an HTMA hair test, which would be a lot cheaper. It's a little bit different. It's testing your hair. It's looking at like how you're absorbing minerals and stuff overall. But when people are iron deficient, they hyper focus on iron. Understandable, but we aren't often taught that things work synergistically in the body. Like she could be like really high in iron right now, actually, but her body just can't use it because she has very little to no vitamin C and or copper in her body, and copper, iron, and vitamin C all kind of live together. That's why people who have they call it the Celtic curse, where like if they eat iron, they'll fucking die because their body is always like chronically high in iron, and they can't really eat vitamin C rich foods because it pushes your iron higher, right? And so they're all interconnected. So it's been almost 50 minutes, longer than I should have been on here for. Thank you so much for watching, folks. If you would like to support my capacity to dump my brain out, be a real human, keep a roof over my head, tea in my pot, I almost said tea in my head, whatever, that works too. Consider becoming a member. It's literally less than $1 a month. It's just a way to support my capacity to exist. You do get early access to videos as I upload them. I do a Sundays only member Q&A, so if I are Sundays member only, I probably won't speak well there either. But on Sunday, I do a Q&A just for members. So if I missed your question here, I'm very much more likely to answer it there because there's less questions coming in and things like that. If you can't do that, or even if you can, consider checking out my shop. I make something for everybody. I've got books, herbal supplements. There's probably something there that could support your health or your well-being or your learning or anything like that. And then make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, share, turn on notifications. All that kind of stuff helps, other people learn that they're smart enough to do this too, and it tells the algorithm that I'm a cool person. So thanks so much for watching, folks, and I'll see you next time. Bye.